If you are just tuning in, this is NBC Sheila Mac show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and I have a special free gift announcement for you. That's right.
Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mac Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Dear friends, I had to share this message because I love you all the most. I'm happy to announce that my new book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom and back into action in any situation, is now available. The heart of this book was written for you. If you're going through a tough situation this year, if you've hit a rock bottom, I want to let you know that number one, you are not alone. And next, that you can, in fact, reinvent and reboot your life on your terms. How do I know that? I know that because I've had to reinvent and reboot my life on many occasions. I can go as far back as being a little child with my parents divorcing when I was very young and then ending up going from home to home, and sometimes I ended up in very, very abusive homes. Later, I found myself at 10 and 11 years old, homeless on the streets, going from place to place and having to be very resourceful on my own. Then I found the magical foster care, and I went into this system, and I got to meet all these other girls that went through their own tough situations, and I got to hear their stories, and it was so interesting to me. I thought I was on this grand adventure, and when I was in this foster care system, one of the things that I did was there was this big mansion house that used to be the orphanage nearby, and these people bought it. So I went up to the door, maybe the first or second day I was there, and I knocked on the door and I introduced myself and I said, I want to be your personal assistant. And right away, they hired me. So I had this life where I got to see what it was like to be in the foster care system, to be in a group home, to not have family contact me at all, and then have these incredible people let me work with them and teach me all these beautiful things. I got to be their personal assistant until I emancipated. I learned how to do events and art and all these amazing, incredible things because I knocked on the door. So that's one of the secrets, is knock on the door and it will be answered. You've got to step up. So in all of that, there were just these times where I did something a little bit different. And I realized that there was this dance that you can go between these two different worlds, and that it's all about a decision. It's a decision on how you show up and what you decide to do with your life that's going to make all the difference. So with that, things got great in my life. I emancipated. I ended up getting married, getting into a relationship, having children. I wanted to give back, so I had 3 of my own children. I also fostered to adopted 3 more children. At 24, I was opening gift stores. I ended up having 5 stores. And with these stores, I had this entire program to help these kids get from foster care, get into a training program when they're emancipating, and learn all the different parts of running a store, because I always wanted to give back in all I was doing. And because of that, that's another secret. When you give, you receive. It's like this law that happens. When you give back, you receive many gifts and many blessings. And the birth of the concept of this book came to me after I had traveled the world and learned with the most incredible people on the planet. And then I got settled again after traveling for 7 years straight, and I bought this beautiful home in Ventura. And a month later, after I had designed everything, put all my furniture in there and made it just perfect, on December 3rd, 2017, I lost my home and everything in it. I lost my car. I lost my cat, all within a few days. Everything that I had worked so hard to achieve was gone. And I found myself moved into a little, it was a prefab home that I had made into a vacation rental. And it was fully booked because everybody had to have a place to stay. So I ended up staying in this little shed on the side of the house. It was less than 400 square feet. And oh my gosh, I got a little bit depressed for a few days, and I thought, wait a minute, what do I do? And I got on my rebounder. I did affirmations. I decided, and it was in that moment of that decision that my destiny was shaped and things changed. I quickly was invited to work in Beverly Hills at a new job. I had been working in real estate for years at this point also, and so I got invited to work there and stayed with friends there, and then got my own place. I was able to get a replacement car quickly, and all these things happened. And one day I went back to that little cabin house as I was getting ready to finally put it on the market and sell it. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's a formula that I've used all through my life. So I sat down and I wrote out the beginnings, the Boots formula, and the steps that I needed to take, no matter the situation, the steps that I had to take to get me back on track quickly. Within a month's time, I was already moved out and moving on and happy in my life, and people were still stuck. And I thought, well, that's kind of different, it's just, there's something different. So I wrote that out, and then I sat and I thought about, what was my inspiration? What was it that I had gone through all these crazy things in my life? What inspired me? And what came to me was the memory of being at my grandparents' home. And my grandmother was, she was very interesting, yet she was a businesswoman. She never lost her feminine, and she was incredible in her business. And she made friends with all these other ladies in her age group, and they would all get together and have tea or coffee and talk for hours. They would share their rich histories about what they've gone through. I mean, there was this one lady that had escaped from a concentration camp, and she lost her entire family as a young girl. There was another lady there that her husband passed away, and she had a famous restaurant in downtown LA, and she was running it by herself, even when that wasn't like a cool thing to do or acceptable. She didn't care. She knew, and she traveled the world, and all these stories that these ladies told me. I had another lady that her and her husband escaped a country with a new ruler, and they had to leave their home, their cars, all their worldly possessions, and come to the United States without even speaking the language and start over again. And, I was 4 or 5 years old, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have my own adventures and my own stories, because life is like this. It doesn't matter where you're from. I was in Los Angeles, California. It's so diverse there. So I had these stories from everywhere, and these beautiful ladies that were my role models. I took their stories with me and I carried them with me, and they inspired me.
If you are just tuning in, this is NBC's Sheila Mac Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and today I have a couple of announcements. First, I would like to hear from you. That's right. I would love to hear from you. to be honest. I want to know what your breakthrough is, what your reboot is. How are you reinventing and rebooting your life? What shows would you like to hear more of? What information do you need to help you get back on track this year? And to do that, the best way to connect with me is actually through my new YouTube channel, and that is Sheila Mac Show on YouTube. And there you can see past recordings, and you can also see other information and shares that I have. And I would love for you to share in the comments there what you're needing more of and what you're rebooting this year and how we can help you get back on track. All right, and we're going to get started talking about a very important topic, and that is grief and the healing recovery journey. So I worked for 14 to 16 hours straight until I was ready to collapse from exhaustion. I remodeled every store. I redid all the displays. I decorated for every new sale. When the store closed and it was after hours, I would listen to music, sing, and cry while I designed. I didn't let it out all at once, but in little bits at a time. It took a good 6 months to cry out all my tears after my dad died, and of course, in those 6 months, somebody else died. I wasn't done. I was back at it again, but this time I knew how I processed it. I never took time off, but work was my therapy. That was my drug of choice, and it was a very productive one. I just worked and cried in the privacy of my own space. When I was with customers, I had my public face on. I would greet them and be present and happy and help them find what they were looking for. I was able to take a small break from grieving in those moments, and that was a relief. I didn't have to grieve full time. It wasn't until a couple years later, after my father and grandparents had died, that I realized it took longer, maybe, for me to process because I only let little bits out at a time instead of having a total breakdown. I slid slowly into that rock bottom instead of diving headfirst. Through the fog. Grief looks different for everybody. Each person goes through the grief process in their own way and for different lengths of time. You might need 6 months of solid grieving or a year, or you might let it out a little bit at a time like I did. You could have advice from the best people on the planet, but until you're ready, you can't move on. I have an older friend whose husband died, and she had to go through a 2-year time frame of dealing with her grief and adjusting to her loss. She calls this transitional time the fog. Grief and the ensuing fog can come for anyone, and you just need to give it time. If you move on too soon, you're not healed up, and you can end up in a new broken situation, whether that's a bad relationship or battling an addiction. It's best not to make huge decisions until you get through the fog, so you don't make the wrong choices. If you do need to make a serious decision, make sure to consult an expert, get second or third opinions, and listen to your intuition. You need to get through the fog in order to get to a healthier, happier place. You are not alone, and the fog will not last forever. That I can promise. Know that there's a point when you're finished grieving, but that doesn't mean you will never grieve again. My dad died on Father's Day, so every year when Father's Day comes around, I'm still melancholy. I choose to celebrate the magic memories I had with my dad and am grateful to be connected to all my cousins who are on his side of my family. Today, I have happy memories, and once in a while I shed a tear for those who have transitioned. The pain of my loss has lessened with time, yet it had to be on my time. I've come to terms with my family's transition. Now, I feel my relatives who have passed are all spiritual beings helping me out here and there. I will often say to myself, I wonder how my dad or grandparents would have dealt with this situation. Then I can almost hear their words of wisdom. All their wisdom and memories are planted in the pocket of my heart as an additional guide and resource for me, always. We are still very much connected. Our relationship has just changed a little. I'm always grateful for their memories and the legacy of wisdom they left for me. 20 years later, you still honor and grieve your loved ones in one way or another. It's not like they disappear from your heart. You just come to a different place where it's not as difficult as when it first happened. Until you're ready and able to move on, nobody can push you. The door is open. There's no lock on the door, but you have to walk through it on your own. Say goodbye to other people's expectations. Just as there's no right or wrong length of time for the grieving process, there's also no right or wrong way to process that grief. When you're grieving and going through this personal situation, you're going to have a lot of people who try to help you through it or expect you to just get over it. How you grieve and process that grief is right for you. No one can tell you exactly what you need. Honor the time it takes for you to grieve. Walk and work through it rather than just trying to get over it. Walking through the grieving journey is natural, normal, completely healthy, and sane. It's part of our process as human beings. Honor that part of you as much as you honor the part that laughs and plays and does fun things. That emotion of grief is just as good and helpful and purposeful as any other emotion we have. It's sometimes looked down on in society, or we're made to feel like we have to hide our grief. You can do whatever you choose to do with that, but don't hide it from yourself. It's like any kind of healing. If you want to heal, you're going to have to go through the pain. To get to that other side, you have to come to terms with it in your own way, and everybody has their own way of coming to terms with it. Some people may take time away from everybody else and pray or meditate in isolation. Others may choose to surround themselves with people or distract themselves in work or volunteering to take a break from the pain. Too many people feel the should in a lot of parts of their lives. I should feel this way, or I should do this because I see other people grieving like this. Find some way to honor what you need, whether that's taking a walk every night or going to bed early or just asking for help getting through the day. If you need to cry every night for 6 months or journal or take long walks or hike or do yoga every day to get through it, do whatever you need to do. It's all okay. There's no magic bullet to end your grief. There's no magic moment when you get over it. All grieving is individual. There are also many ways to honor your loved one. You can have a memorial or ceremony personalized around the person who passed and those who remain. You can connect with others and share your favorite memories. Take pictures of them at different stages of their life or of their house or whatever you want to remember about them, and make a collage with your favorite pictures. Do something so you have a memory and you honor that grieving time. You may even do things differently for different people that you lose. Just honor whatever comes to you, because honoring your loved one is part of healing. There's no right or wrong. However you need to heal is the best way. I wouldn't worry that someone grieved too long or too hard, but I would be concerned if someone gets stuck in their grief, feeling like they've lost their identity and aren't sure how to continue forward in life. They may need more extensive help processing that grief. And I would definitely be troubled by someone who isn't grieving the loss of a close loved one at all. If there's no crying, no feelings or emotions, they're not going through that process and something's not okay. They might be in denial, and that just means the grief will come out in some other way at another time. That person probably needs to get help from a therapist or trained professional. Please check out the resource guide at the end of this book, as well as my website for updated resources and additional activities that can point you toward the help you may need. www.sheilamac.com/grief support. We're all mortal. Having a loved one pass can lead to questioning your own mortality and wondering how much time you have left. We're not promised anything beyond this moment. How do you want to live your life? What really matters? Channel your grief into remembering to enjoy every moment of this space and this energy. Your loved one would want you to do so. Don't wait for happiness. Enjoy every single thing that you're given now. Create a gratitude practice. Make room for reading or prayers or meditation. Hang your favorite pictures and make new memories. Give yourself a beautiful home environment full of positive, healing energy. I have a sign out front of my house that reads, "Be happy. Always tell the truth. Work hard. Laugh out loud. Give thanks for your family. Say I love you. Laugh, giggle, be silly. See the world. Help others. Be grateful. Try new things. Say please and thank you. Dream big. Use kind words. Don't whine. Do your best. No running in the house. Be proud of yourself and remember that you are loved." This simple, admittedly cheesy sign brings a positive, joyful energy to my whole environment. People will stop and say, "I love that sign." It makes their day. It makes me happy too. And then I'm spreading that to someone else. As your grief passes, remember that you are in charge of your life. You get to choose happiness. You get to choose your environment because it affects every part of you. It affects your relationships with children, with adults, with your pets. That energy affects how you show up at work. Do you have a beautiful place to rest? Can you make your bedroom a retreat? It doesn't have to cost a lot or be fancy or follow what the pages of a magazine show you. You don't have to go on vacation and spend thousands of dollars to sit outside and be grateful and meditate and do some yoga. You can create that space in your own life. If you are just tuning in, this is NBC Sheila Mac Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheila Mac, and today I'd like to give a special thanks to this episode's sponsor, Team Treehouse. That's right, teamtreehouse.com. So, if you're ready to launch your new career in coding, Treehouse has one of the best and most affordable online classrooms for you. At Treehouse, they have rethought the learning process and built a proven system to get you the skills and knowledge you need to achieve your goals. When you're done with a course, you haven't just watched a video. You learned, practiced, and absorbed a concept. Or choose to build a portfolio, create a network, and land your dream job with our boot camp style tech degree program. Land a development job this year. Whatever your goal will get you there. Start your 7-day free trial today. And you just need to go to www.teamtreehouse.com. It can also be helpful to keep your routine during your time of grief. If you have an exercise routine, a work routine, a family routine, it's helpful to participate in those as much as you are able to. You need that healing space, but you also want to stay in society. You need that space between the grieving and the living so you don't get stuck in your grief. Creating positive energy will attract more of the same energy. Then you're not just experiencing tragedy. You're turning your grief into the gift of a positive life shift. Love cures all. It's really important that you have support as you go through this time. But when your loved ones are all grieving too, it can bring up hurt feelings and other issues. After a death, people tend to look at their connection to the loved one through the items that were left. They may fight over who gets what, but it's all just stuff. Don't let the fighting lead to the loss of another relationship. If you think about the wishes of your parent or the person who is transitioning on and leaving us, would they want to have their children fighting over stupid stuff? No, they would never want that. They want you to support each other through this difficult time. I talked to a client last week who has 4 siblings. They just lost their parents, and they're trying to sell the family house. All 5 of them have to agree on the offer and sign off on the sale. But every time they get together, instead of saying I love you or sharing memories, all they do is fight. Eventually, they all stop speaking to one another. Each of them had a different reason for why they did or did not want to get rid of the house. One person was tied to a memory. Somebody else was ready to sell it because they didn't want to think about the house without their mom, because it hurt. They wanted to get away as quickly as possible. Another one needed to sit and process it and have time to say goodbye. I talked with them and suggested that they think about what their mom would want. How would she feel knowing that she left something that's only causing everybody to be upset? That's not honoring her memory. The cost of maintaining that house, paying for upkeep and property taxes and insurance is not worth squabbling over. To say nothing of the cost of those precious familial relationships. Eventually, they came to an agreement to just honor their mother and thank her memory. They sold the house right away, split it up the way she desired, and were done with it. And now they meet every Sunday morning for brunch, just like they used to when their parents were alive. They honor their mother through loving one another. Love cures all. Love is a healer, and that's what helps people out of the hole that a death leaves. How to help others. If you're reading this to help somebody else get through their grief, that is a kind instinct, but you also want to allow and honor their space. How can we be there for other people and support them but honor their space, time, and process that they need to go through as they grieve? Start by asking permission. You may want to bring something over or show them some love with a card, a dinner, or an offer to take them out. Ask if that's okay and give them the opportunity to decline. The most important thing is to honor their space in that and ask, how are you doing? If you want to talk about it, I'm available. If you just want to talk about other things and have space, I get it. You let me know. I'm here as much or as little as you need me to be. There are lots of ways to help someone who is grieving. You can offer to pick up the phone and call them when they're available. You can offer to come over and talk or be available in a crisis. If they want to escape what they're going through a little bit, you can take them to see a movie or get a pedicure or anything that will distract them from thinking about their loss for a short while. That gives them a choice. As we've established, people sometimes need that breathing space between grieving and not wanting to talk about it anymore, or they don't want to get buried under that emotion, so they need their friends to pull them out. They may just need a girls' night out where their problems don't exist just for those few hours. They'll grieve in their own time. They just need you to help give them that break from grieving. Other times, you need that friend who will stay up all night with you and let you cry your eyes out, listening to you and not really saying much, just being there and being present. Either way, always ask permission so you're honoring that person's personal grief process. You're there for them, but offering what they need and want rather than trying to make their grief look different. Grieving the loss of your identity as a mother. The grief process goes to another level when a parent loses a child, whether it's a miscarriage or a child who was in your life for a long time. This is a deeper pain than most people can imagine or will ever experience. It is the most difficult experience a woman can go through. Again, you're going to need your own timeline to be able to honor all these stages of grief and know that you're honoring that memory and doing whatever you need to heal. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. Some people won't understand how personal that experience is. If they haven't been through it, they just won't get it. This type of healing is a sacred process and so individual and unique that nobody, no matter what, can tell you how it has to go. You just have to honor your own way. Finding out you can't get pregnant or have children is a form of grief too. You have to let go of this idea of motherhood. There are obviously different ways to be a mother, but it's grieving that possibility of becoming pregnant and giving birth to a child. Sometimes you can find a soul purpose through this loss. It may be an adoption. It may be some other form of a family. It might be helping somebody else's child in some way. If somebody is holding space for a child to come into their life, one way or another, physically or through some other means, that is going to show up in its own beautiful way. Whatever the form of the child or the purpose of mothering or fathering will show up in the way it's supposed to. I was told after my first child that it was completely impossible to have any more children. It was over. At first, I blamed myself. Why did this happen to me? Did I eat the wrong foods? Then I was angry at myself and at the doctors. It was so disheartening to watch the big family I'd always imagined disappear. I didn't want my son to be an only child like I was. I'd always pictured brothers and sisters. I had to feel that sorrow and grieve that loss. But then I found new hope. I had been in the foster care system for a little while when I was younger, so I chose to help other kids who were in that situation. I decided to foster to adopt. 3 other children joined our family, and they were a beautiful fit. Then, at the end of that journey of adoption, I found I was pregnant. How did this happen? I asked my gynecologist. The doctor said, "You don't know how pregnancy happens?" It had been 8 years, and I'd been told it would never happen, not in a million years. Maybe in the spiritual realm, those children were in the family for the length of time they needed to be in the family, and it's almost like it was destined. We were called to fill that space, and then 2 more children showed up back to back, my daughter and my youngest son. As soon as I saw them, it was like, well, there you are. But before that, it was like I didn't get to meet them yet because I had to serve these other children. Somehow, out there in the universe, there was this plan that was beyond us. We needed to parent, and my first son needed to be the brother, and all those children needed to be in the family. I was supposed to have each and every one of those beautiful children in my life, however they showed up. If you or somebody you love is going through those situations, and if they're open to ways to share love and to serve, and it's coming from love in all its forms, whatever is right shows up. It all lines up. What are you guided to do? Maybe it's helping with children or volunteering as a backup foster parent. That might prepare you for having your own children while giving these other children love that they don't have from anyone else in their life. From grief to gratitude. We feel grief for the death of a loved one, but we can also feel grief for the loss of a lifestyle or mourn a relationship. There can be a time of grief for losing a relationship, losing a job, losing a house, losing anything that was a part of you and now isn't anymore. These are big life shifts, and it makes sense to honor them as you move on. You have to go through this process of grieving them before you move on and see the benefits of whatever that change is. When you do, you usually see that ultimately it works out for the best. For me, I've moved many times. I had many different jobs. I've made many shifts based on the seasons of my life. With every house I move from and every shift I make, even if I know I'm leveling up, I say goodbye and give gratitude to that time in my life. I thank the memories and send love as I move on. It's not an official ceremony, but it's something I've always done to make these shifts, and it can take some of the sting out of a big change. Whether someone dies or you're going through a breakup or you just felt like you didn't get closure when you were laid off from a job, create a ceremony to help you go through the healing process. Write a letter to the person who left, acknowledging your sadness, anger, or loneliness. Say anything you wish you had said while they were still here. Then send off your memories with love. Be thankful for the good parts and acknowledge that these things happen, and now you're going your separate ways. You'll have that release because it's a healing place to come from gratitude. That energy is felt and it will send you better and better places. Then, when you've moved into your new place or at your new job or in a new relationship, you will be grateful for the clean start that lets you make it as beautiful and fun and perfect for your lifestyle right now as possible. Applying the Boots formula to grief. Being. My relatives passed away within a short period of time, but I still had family who were living. I had relatives in the hospital. Some of them also knew they didn't have a lot of time left. So for their sake, as well as my own, I had to make sure that I showed up for them, not in a place of grieving. I also had to decide how to show up for my children, my clients, and for myself. Taking a break from grieving while I was at work served me because it honored my need for that space. I made the decision of how I was going to show up for work. I told Lori, my sales manager at the stores, when I come into work, I take that piece of me that is grieving and I put it down so I can serve my clients. That was my choice, and it felt like literally setting down a weight to take that break. Then I could pick it back up when I had private moments. At home, I would journal to let everything out. I made the decision to show up for myself and everyone else in a certain way. I stayed on my schedule and followed my routine, and that saved me. It let me smile and laugh even though I had lost somebody a few days ago. I didn't get stuck in that grieving place. I didn't get dragged down into a full-time depression or extended period of low energy that pulls down other parts of life. Orientation. The orientation part of this process was knowing. This is where I am. This is what happened. It is what it is, and it's something we couldn't change. We did the best we could. We tried every surgery, alternative treatments, and extra care. We did everything we could, and sometimes this is just the way it is. Order of operations. Because I'm an only child, I unfortunately had the duty of organizing my relatives' funerals and closing out their affairs. Some had wills, some had trusts, and others didn't have much at all. I had to figure out how to make the arrangements and how to pay for them all. That is a big responsibility for anyone, but it was even more difficult at such a young age. I was going through something emotional. I was grieving, and I had to just set that aside as best I could and make the decisions. Do they want to be buried this way or that way? What about this religion, that practice? How do I honor the family? I didn't want to think about any of that. What if I made the wrong decision? I saw relatives I hadn't seen in years, and I just wanted to make sure that any family drama was set aside in order to honor this person's passing. Thinking. Sometimes we need to create some space between grieving and living so we don't just get stuck in our grief. There's a balance, a dance between the part of yourself that wants to go out with your friends and be with people and talk about other things, and the part of yourself that goes over and over the story of your loss. It's healing to move on when you're ready to do so. You still love the person you lost, and you still honor their memory, but you need to go on for all the other people in your life and for yourself. It really helped me to acknowledge the person who passed away and to ask myself, what would they want for me? What would be their highest wish for me? My loved ones would want me to be happy while I'm here, not stuck in grieving. That was when I realized that not grieving all the time actually honors their memory even more. I would never want my children to sit and grieve and wallow for years and years. I would want them to heal. I'd understand that they had grieved, but I'd want to see them have happy moments, to live their lives and enjoy everything here and do everything they want for themselves. Stepping up. What I went through, and with other people that I've worked with on grief, I've learned the healing timeframe and process is unique to each individual. Stepping up means stepping into your rituals, routines, the things you know will help you. The only person who's going to write a prescription for grieving is you. You're the only person who will know if you need to go do yoga or hike in the hills or write or paint. Whatever it is, you'll almost naturally go to. You'll know, and it'll be therapeutic. That's what's going to help you the most. From grieving rock bottom to moment of empowerment. My grandmother was the last of my grandparents to pass away. I had to clean out her house, sell her furniture, and give away or donate everything else. There was nothing particularly valuable, but it had value to me because of our memories. We'd grown very close during the long time I took care of her. For the next 6 months following her death, all I could do was go to her home and look at everything. It was hard for me to touch anything, and I certainly didn't want somebody else to go through Grandma's stuff. I loved Grandma. I couldn't do that to her things. I was really conflicted, but I just needed that time to process. I would go there after work for an hour and just sit there looking at everything and remembering who she was and how much she meant to me. Then one day, I was ready. I called Goodwill and let go of all of it. It was cathartic. I had my time. I did my grieving. I walked through that tunnel and got to the other side, and I was ready to release it. I didn't feel guilty or bad or need to explain it. I honored her and did what I needed to do. Reboot activity. How to honor yourself during the grief process. Everyone grieves differently, and a person goes through the stages of grief whether they have lost a loved one, their family, a friend, a pet who is family, or even when going from one stage of life or from rock bottom back into action. Grieving is a part of the healing and reorganizing process. Honor your need to grieve. You matter, you are loved, and grieving is the best gift you can give yourself. Don't pretend everything is okay. Give yourself the gift of space and time for grieving. Here's a checklist of what that might look like. Check off the boxes of the actions that you think may help you the most. Then refer back to your list when you need help processing your grief. Create a buddy system of family and friends. If you are the one responsible for making final arrangements, or if you need to seek legal advice, it is important to have other people you trust or who you can turn to for help. This is the most difficult time to make centered, thoughtful decisions because you just want to have that time to grieve. There are also people who may try to take advantage of someone who has experienced a loss. If at all possible, get a friend, family member, or legal advisor to help you before signing contracts or making costly commitments on arrangements. If needed, write everything down and go to lunch or meditate on the arrangements overnight before making a final commitment. Review any will or trust to see if your loved one has already paid for or designed a final ceremony. Legal fees and extra taxes could surprise you. It may be wise to check with your local attorney or loved one's accountant or a trusted CPA to help guide you on these matters. Take care of your health. Check in with your regular doctor and ask a friend to help you with accountability on your wellness routine. Taking time out to rest, eat healthy foods, and exercise can help you maintain a state of peace and wellness even through this grieving time. Being in your best health honors your loved one's life and memory. Find a way to honor your loved one's life while you live yours to the fullest. It takes effort to live in the present and not dwell on the past. Grieving can take months or years. The relationship with your loved one changes to that of loving memories, but you can find ways to honor the person who has passed. One thing that helped me was getting involved in programs that helped others dealing with the health issues my dad and one of my grandparents had. I contributed to a Race for the Cure marathon and other cancer research programs in memory of my father. I was also involved in a dementia fundraiser in memory of my grandfather. I also thought about what my family members who had passed would truly want for me. I could almost hear them telling me to live a good life, help others, and always do my best. As I move forward with my life, I know that I am still honoring their memory and legacy. Postpone major life changes at this time. People often attempt a life shift or adjustment to heal the pain and then regret the decision when they are finally out of the fog again. Try to hold off on making any major changes, such as moving, remarrying, changing jobs, or having another child. Be patient with beautiful, authentic you. It can take months or even years to heal from a major loss and accept your changed life. Although you will continue to make steps forward, there will still be days and moments where emotions show up. These emotions are part of the healing process. They are normal and they are okay. Send love to the memories of your loved ones and to yourself. Seek outside help when necessary. If your grief is affecting your day-to-day life, if it becomes too much to bear, or if it is overwhelming, seek professional assistance to help work through this time. Asking for help is a sign of strength. We all need help from time to time. Seek out your most loving peer group. Talk about your feelings to relatives and friends you can trust. Get plugged into support groups for your specific loss. This connection to a group of people who are experienced in dealing with the loss of a loved one and who have walked in your shoes can help you heal and readjust to your loved one's transition. In most cases, close family and friends will be grieving a little bit differently, so getting additional support and connection will help everyone involved. I created the B&B community online as a way to connect people who may be going through a grieving experience and who would otherwise feel alone. There is power in numbers, and you can join us at www.facebook.com/groups/Sheila Mac Show BNB/about. How to help others grieve. If someone you care about has lost a loved one, there are many ways you can help them through the grieving process. Give space to the art of loving listening. Create time to have coffee, go for a walk, or just talk and encourage them to share their feelings and memories. Sometimes just being a listening ear can be a relief for your friend or loved one. Don't offer advice, just love and listen. It doesn't help the grieving person when you say, "You'll get over it in time." The gift of being present in their moment of grieving is all they need. Step up where you can. This can include anything that gives your friend or loved one space to grieve: babysitting, sharing your talents such as helping with a gathering, sending out messages for your grieving friend, or creating a team of their trusted friends to help with cooking and running errands while they tend to their other loved ones. Be patient. Remember that it can take a long time to recover from a major loss. Make yourself available, but if they don't want to talk, that's okay too. There will be times when your friend may prefer space, so you can help with a loving check-in and reminder that you're there for them if they need a friend to talk to or just to go do something silly or different or not discuss the loss at all. Even in serious grieving, a person may ask for just a night out to not think about it all and not grieve. That is okay and often part of the process as well. Encourage professional help when necessary. Don't hesitate to recommend professional help when you feel someone is experiencing too much pain to cope alone. Signs may include not getting back to work, stopping a healthy eating and exercise routine, poor hygiene, or using drugs or alcohol to cope. If you see any of these symptoms, it may be time to connect them with more support. For further resources for grief, I have a resource section in this book, and the most current updates can be found on my website. My goal is to make sure that as you heal on your terms, you can connect to as many resources as possible. I will also be adding additional activities that may help you get through the grieving process at www.sheilamac.com/grief support. My gift to you. Walk out through the 7 stages of grief toward healing. The 7 stages of grieving are real and a natural part of healing and coming to terms with the loss of a loved one. If you are going through the grieving process, I have created a free gift for you. Get a 7-week email program to help you recognize, embrace, and learn to cope with the 7 stages of grief. Learn the strategies to honor this process and new ways to celebrate the memories of your loved one. Shock and denial. You will probably react to learning of the loss with numbing disbelief. Pain and guilt. Anger and bargaining. Depression, reflection, loneliness. The upward turn. Reconstruction and working through. Acceptance and hope. Go to www.sheilamacshow.com/grieving. Chapter 2. Feel your feelings. Grief. My dad was diagnosed with cancer and passed away on Father's Day, a few months before my son was born. 3 months later, his mother passed away, joining my paternal grandfather, who had passed away when I was younger. 6 months after that, my grandmother's death, my maternal grandfather passed away. Then my maternal grandmother, the last of my grandparents, passed away too. I lost all of these relatives in such a short period of time. I had 4 gift stores and was getting the 5th up and running. I had just given birth to my youngest child, and I was taking care of the other people who were still alive, and they were grieving too. I noticed that my remaining family and our close friends all grieved differently. Some people cried straight on for a couple of weeks or months and just really disconnected from society. They went into complete grieving, like they took a grief vacation. Other people who had a tendency to drink or use other substances went off the deep end with their addiction as a coping mechanism. Then they had to get through that backslide and get back on their feet and out of whatever bad habit was brought back into their life. I had never faced so much death or had anything big to grieve before. I didn't know what to expect of myself or how to process this grief and sadness. I still had to function. I had to pay the bills, take care of the kids, do all the things that a parent does. I had other elders who were still living, who were sick and needed care. I didn't have the luxury of taking that grieving break, although that would have been helpful and healthier. So I worked for 14 to 16 hours straight until I was ready to collapse from exhaustion. I remodeled every store. I redid all the displays. I decorated for every new sale. When the store closed and it was after hours, I would listen to music, sing, and cry while I designed. I didn't let it out all at once, but in little bits at a time. It took a good 6 months to cry out all my tears after my dad died, and of course, in those 6 months, somebody else died. I wasn't done. I was back at it again, but this time I knew how I processed it. I never took time off, but work was my therapy. That was my drug of choice, and it was a very productive one. I just worked and cried in the privacy of my own space. When I was with customers, I had my public face on. I would greet them and be present and happy and help them find what they were looking for. I was able to take a small break from grieving in those moments, and that was a relief. I didn't have to grieve full time. It wasn't until a couple years later, after my father and grandparents had died, that I realized it took longer, maybe, for me to process because I only let little bits out at a time instead of having a total breakdown. I slid slowly into that rock bottom instead of diving headfirst. Through the fog. Grief looks different for everybody. Each person goes through the grief process in their own way and for different lengths of time. You might need 6 months of solid grieving or a year, or you might let it out a little bit at a time like I did. You could have advice from the best people on the planet, but until you're ready, you can't move on. I have an older friend whose husband died, and she had to go through a 2-year time frame of dealing with her grief and adjusting to her loss. She calls this transitional time the fog. Grief and the ensuing fog can come for anyone, and you just need to give it time. If you move on too soon, you're not healed up, and you can end up in a new broken situation, whether that's a bad relationship or battling an addiction. It's best not to make huge decisions until you get through the fog, so you don't make the wrong choices. If you do need to make a serious decision, make sure to consult an expert, get second or third opinions, and listen to your intuition. Thank you for tuning in to the Sheila Mac Show, reality at its finest, where we share real situations with real solutions to help you rebuild, reinvent, and reboot your life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mac. I'm giving you some homework. Grab a copy of my bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, to learn the formula to go from rock bottom and back into action in any situation. If you have a burning question for the show, send it in to www.dearsheila.com. Tune in again Mondays at 1 p.m. Pacific Time and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, right here on KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind.
Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mac's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. So if life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.sheilamac.com today.